ladies and gentlemen, here again with this awesome project. My project I showed on the last crystal brush. So to continue with the first one, I would like to show you how I continue painting the base, and in that case I decide to paint with the airbrush. Why? Because it will be more interesting, faster, and to do something special if I have to create different tones and I don't know well what kind of ambient I want to represent. So with the airbrush you can paint super fast and fix something if you don't like it, or just test new colors, like in that case. If you see this video, you will see that at the beginning I start to paint with different greens, then I add browns, then grays. So the idea will be play with different tones, to don't paint everything with gray, because if you think that the stones are gray, this is a mistake, because then you won't use the information about the color. So if you lose that information, then will be boring. So if I don't play with a lot of colors, it's not a miniature painted by me. So for that reason, I recommend start with the airbrush, just to play. If you see, I'm playing with different greens, some of them with more yellow, some of them with more blue, with a bit of orange, maybe with the complementary color to create a different gray, but a gray with a lot of color inside. So this is more or less the idea. And the good point from the airbrush, it's because it's faster, and when you are painting the grass, something like that, you won't cover everything and you won't remove the grass, won't look sticky. Okay, so with airbrush will be a thin layer perfectly to cover the grass, but the result won't be sticky. If you see my airbrush, I use a 0.2 point, so my needle it's super tiny, and for that reason I recommend make a high dilution when you paint with airbrush. But in that case, if you want to create a base coat, I recommend add a bit of paint, more than when you use glazes with airbrush, but not too much. So this is the idea, play with different tones and always with a lot of color. In that case, now brown, just to test. If you don't like it, you'll see that in some moments I change the color, I fix something, I create more light, I add shadows. So with airbrush on that kind of base, or when you are painting bases, will be super fast and super interesting, because you can play easy with a lot of colors. One key for you, remember that you have to remove everything where is white color, and try to remove the black color too, because the black at the end will dirt the light, and the white color maybe will desaturate the colors around that. But it's interesting to create an intensity from the color. So for that, you have to cover well with the base coats, and then just play with new colors. Some of them lighter than others, and some of them with more saturation, but not too much, because when you are painting something like earth, grass, I don't recommend use a lot of saturation, just in some point to create something special, but not too much, because then if you paint everything with super fancy colors, then the result could be strange. If you see, for example, this gray, I made it mixing some complementary colors. It's like a green desaturated. When you are painting with airbrush, remember that is the same way as you paint, or I teach you to paint miniatures. You have to search the angle to paint on the correct way. And all of this to paint with orange. A lot of colors. You'll see that this orange will work with different nuances and will be depend of the base coat have. So will be different when you are painting over a green color and when you are painting on a gray or a dark green or something like yellow. So this is the idea. If you play with a similar or the same color in different ways on different areas, then you will create different tones. And as I said, super fast. For example, now I'm playing with this green to create something like mousse or something like that on the rocks, the field. It's interesting to create this kind of tones now, because if you paint everything with the same brown or the same gray or the same green, then you will be scared to add new tones. And now, for example, if you want to add purple or violet or magenta or orange, maybe like you said, like you watch it, it's possible, because if you don't like it, it will be super easy to change it. If you are trying to paint at the end, you will be super scared to change something. Just you are thinking to finish the model, to have done and show on the contest. And Crystal Brush to me is a really special contest. It's my 4th time there, and I'm super happy to bring you that, because I think it's one of my best or special project from each year. I'm super happy with this result, so I will like share with you, because without your support this couldn't be possible. A bit of brown and go ahead. Remember that you have to paint the shadows on different areas, but not everything with the same shadow, because if you have just one shadow then it's the same. It's boring. Remember, as I said in another videos, you have to play with different shadows. For that reason I said mid-tones. The trick will be play with a lot of mid-tones. Some of them will be darker than others, but don't think on shadows, because if you just think about shadows, then you will think about just one shadow. So you have to create something deeper in some areas and with less deep in another. And now it's the time to play with different colors. If you have seen my model, maybe you know for what is that. So if you didn't see my model, maybe you can understand for what will be. If I don't play with a lot of colors, it's not a miniature painted by me, you know. I'm crazy with the colors. And why not, as the same trick I explained it with the orange, it's the same with this turquoise. You can add a bit of this on different parts to create different tones. Always I recommend you, when I'm painting with airbrush, keep attention on my trigger and my finger to watch how I paint, because I don't paint maybe in the regular way. I play going to back, going to front with the trigger to blow paint or spray paint and blow just air and dry the surface. It's a trick to control better and aim better. So this is the base. This is the way I painted the base, just the beginning with airbrush. Then you'll know that the result is completely different. But this is the first steps. So now is the moment to paint capibases with the brush, because you know I love use the brush, and in that case, if you watch well my video, I'm using my brush to make mixes in my airbrush. It's a synthetic brush, very old, but it's perfect to paint faster on that kind of capibases. So don't care if you don't have the perfect point or a super new brush, because to paint the capibases, the base coats, it's perfect use an old brush. Maybe it's better than a new one, because you won't be scared. And as you see, I won't remove the detail, painting with a thick layer. On the face too. And why not? My key, the hair dryer. I always use my hair dryer to dry the surface and paint faster, and because I want to match the colors. If you have a color a bit of satin or a bit glossy, I recommend you use the hair dryer with a warm temperature to blow over the miniature and dry it. You will get a matte surface, or maybe closer to matte than glossy. For sure, if you use a glossy finish on your paints, then will be super hard to get a flat color. Okay, so you will have to use a flatter or a matte varnish. And why not? If with the first one you didn't cover it perfectly, as in my case happened, you have to paint a new one, a new capibase again, to remove all the details. Maybe some of you now in your home are thinking that I'm crazy. An original miniature and scratch build painting like that. Okay, now I change my brush. Just for the details, but for the first time the fur, it's perfect because it's a huge surface, so you don't have to be scared to paint with an old brush super fast like that. You have example here. Remember, if you don't know what kind of color do you want for the details, I recommend use a desaturated color like grays, brown, something like that, but desaturated and a bit dark. Will be better to don't destroy the attention on the other parts you are painting. And then when you have decided what kind of color do you want, it's the moment to paint with a new one. Or maybe the base coat you decide, it's okay for the lights. If you see, for example, I'm making a mix between brown and red to paint that part. And for sure, a bit darker. The color I start to use will be darker than the final result. Remember that. We play with the first shadow. If you want to go just in one direction, it's better start with the first shadow and go to the highest light, and then if you have to paint again on the shadows, at the end you can paint with the airbrush or just fix or add the last shadow, the second shadow, with your brushes. But I recommend play with airbrush for the second shadows. It will be easier and faster. So for that part, this kind of belts, I use a similar brown but darker. Then with the lights I'll change completely the color. And this is the white part. It's super important paint at the beginning too, because it's super interesting paint now and create a sketch to know where you want to represent the white part. In that case, because I paint with two colors, the violet and white. So if you paint everything on the violet, you have done the violet perfectly, hair by hair, all the tufts, you have painted the fur perfectly. then can you imagine that you have to add white color? Maybe you will be super scared. And maybe if you decide to do it and you then make a mistake, what happened? You will have to paint again the fur on the violet again, because you paint too much with white, or maybe you paint with too high contrast and you don't like the result. So for that, to fix that kind of mistakes and don't be scared painting that part, paint it now, because you will decide where is the area to the violet and the white. For sure you can fix it at the end, you can move something and you will see that I changed something, but now it's a sketch, so you have to build up your miniature step by step, and this one it's super important, okay? Because now you will decide if you have to add more or less surface with this new color. Now you don't have to think about the brush strokes, just add the color on the surface where you think will be interesting and will be enough. Now just with these two colors looks much better, more interesting. I was playing on that foot to know if it's okay or not. When I'm painting a crystal brush or an entry or a miniature special, completely special like that, you have to test the color, to test your ideas, and if you don't like them, change them. But please don't think that you are making mistakes. Just you make information that you don't like it, and you will decide to change to another more interesting. This will be like paint freehands. All this saber tooth, it's like a completely freehand, because you know that I will paint hair by hair in little group of tabs or hair by hair. Don't forget paint the teeth. Are super important in that mode. The nose too. You have to paint everything, change the color. Everything that you can paint now will be better to understand where is the color, where change, where is the light, to know the value, because the value of the light will be completely different on a white surface to a black surface. So you have to decide. And this is everything. So I hope you have enjoyed watching that video tutorial. Thank you for your support, and I hope you can continue watching these video tutorials, because we have something really interesting to show you. My completely entry to this crystal brush. So thank you very much to be there watching us, and see you in the next video tutorial, next streaming painting with Vanessa. So thank you very much. Bye bye.